this Politico scandal. Essentially, we now know that the U.S. government was paying millions of dollars to Politico to essentially keep them afloat. They had like 40 subscriptions to Politico, and it was $8 million last year. I mean, and by the way, once USAID cut off their money, Politico did not pay their entire staff yesterday. Now, they said it was a glitch.
Jeremy, it was a glitch.
I heard it was a glitch.
They're dead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go to Hannah Claire first on this. How deep is? By the way, BBC also got money from USAID. How deep is this? I mean, this is state-owned media. I mean, $8 million is a lot of money for a dead website. You know, it seems like they bailed them out.
Right. I mean, I actually think that there's a ton of federal influence in journalism, and I think people don't always aren't always aware of it. There are so many places that get grants from the federal government or any kind of, what effectively is aid. You think of PBS, the public broadcast station, or you think of NPR. Those ones seem obviously funded because they're described as public, but it's not surprising to me that some of these other outlets have specifically ties to the government. I want to know more about what money was issued and under what circumstances. It seems sort of crazy that immediately, within one payroll cycle, the Politico was like, we can't pay anybody. Nobody gets any money at all. And I've worked for companies where they'll say like, oh, it was a glitch, but obviously it was like a human error. It was a back end problem.
Tim Pool confirmed broke. Got it. Go on.
I just think that media has struggled for a really long time. I'm ignoring you.
Thanks, Styx. Yes, thanks, Styx, for giving me that courtesy laugh. I knew she wasn't going to say anything. Go on, yeah.
Look, I'm a true professional.
I know, you really are. I see you wore your sweats and brought your cat to work today.
You said I could work from home. You said I didn't have to move to Wisconsin. I knew you were going to comment on my sweatshirt too. I was like, I'm wearing a sweatshirt on stream. And at least my hair's not in a bun.
Yeah, that would have been the ultimate betrayal. Yeah,
well,
sorry.
Look, it's hard to compete with Styx. Styx has like a full-on look. He has an aesthetic.
Yeah,
I have a black leather jacket. I could go put it on Monday. That's what I'll wear.
I'm almost as piratical as the U.S. government.
Yeah. Sorry, where you were saying,
the margins that for operation for most media companies are awful. I mean, independent or mainstream. And I just think a lot of independent people don't have the opportunity to get these like generous grants from wherever. I wouldn't be surprised if you could find that the New York Times was accepting some kind of money. Now, why it would come from like USAID, which is like hypothetically foreign aid, I guess there's some domestic in it, seems sketchy to me, but you might see that this hastens the collapse. Like remember when BuzzFeed had a bunch of layoffs, or CNN had some bad numbers at the beginning of this year? It's always been precarious, but things are shifting.
What do you think, Styx? You think? I mean, I'm going to go ahead and assume that this is the end of Politico.
Yeah, they're done. The biggest part about it, though, is something that a lot of people aren't really mentioning, which is that the only reason why domestic propaganda on places like Politico is allowed is under the Obama administration. There was a long-standing rule against domestic propaganda in the United States, and most people don't even know this. They never even heard the story. It was banned in the United States. The idea was, if you want to do propaganda overseas, that doesn't matter. It's not U.S. citizens. But if you want to do domestic propaganda, that's not allowed. This was ended around 2013, if I remember correctly, under the Obama administration. And so if the U.S. government is literally using aid money to fund, legacy media, there's probably a reason for that. It's like, hey, the administration needs favorable coverage. Here's $1 million friggin' dollars. And so you can pay the payroll. And the idea is effectively that's vote buying. You're paying off groups that are informing the public, supposedly at least. You're paying the money, and the current administration is the one doing it. Now, I would ask liberals out there, the 10 that are hate watching you probably, would you want the Trump administration to pay off legacy media firms to give positive coverage to the administration? When you answer that question, you'll understand.
Hannah Claire, what do you make of, do you think there's any potential for lawsuits in this? Whether it's against the U.S. government, probably not, or Politico for, effectively being an arm of the government. Remember, Politico was the first to publish the 51 intelligence officers said that the Hunter Biden laptop was fake. That was their scoop.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, my tax dollars were spent to propagandize me. I feel like I want some form of, penance for that.
Yeah. And it's hard to say. I mean, the obvious first legal repercussion would be a fraud, right? Like, can you go after Politico for fraud? Can you go after them for false reporting? If they defamed you, if they printed something incorrectly about you, you could potentially go after them, get some sort of compensation, and then also they would maybe have to, issue a correction. Yeah. But it's difficult to compel them to do that, especially if it's been chronic. If over the last 4 years, Politico consistently promoted false information that supported the Biden administration or attacked Trump, I don't know that there's going to be one clear-cut lawsuit that just fixes and reverses that. And in part because the media landscape moves so quickly, that damage is done. Like if you read a misleading fact, if you got some sort of like anonymous quote from a paid insider who was like told by the administration, the Biden administration, go to Politico, they'll report this would help us out. All of those things are kind of long gone, and that's the downside. They may live on the internet, but the amount of fact checking and the amount of diligence that you'd need is probably not there. I think you're more likely to see legal repercussions on the individual level. Like if a senator were to sue Politico for falsely reporting or misleading some kind of information. But even then, like, it's not going to be a big smackdown that I think people would feel vindicated if it were.
Well, I think they're probably broke.
Yeah, I don't think that Politico will suffer any legal repercussions, but it doesn't really matter because they're pretty much dying anyway. So they'll probably go out of business. We've seen this repeatedly. Politico, Vox, Salon, HuffPo, and so forth. The missing link media,
Vice.
especially, Vice, Rolling Stone at this point, I suppose. All of the left-leaning ones have been dying off because people are no longer paying any attention to them. So apparently the U.S. government was propping up the legacy media. This, by the way, doesn't surprise me in the least.
Well, other Democratic states do this. I remember last year, New York unveiled a program where they were basically going to give money, cover the salaries of journalists who chose to work at their local papers. And they were like, this is important for local media, which I actually think local media is really important.
Actually. Yeah.
But, and maybe if you want it's weird because, like, on the one hand, I think local media is really important. I think especially in the internet age, it's very easy to think that you need to be talking about what's happening on the national level because that's how you get views. But most big stories are broken on the local level by really diligent journalists. And so the idea that you want journalists to live and work near their communities is good. Sounds good, right? But then again, like, I don't trust Kathy Hochul. So if she's the one awarding hundreds of thousands of dollars or anyone in her administration and saying, oh, well, this newspaper is doing a good job, so they get to have extra money to hire extra journalists, like, I'm sorry, it's just the political climate we're in. I'm going to assume there's some kind of bias.
Or it could be even municipal. Like, imagine that you've got a city, you've got a crooked mayor, and you're getting money for covering stories at that level. They're petitioning the governor potentially for that money and getting favorable news coverage. Meanwhile, they're trash.
Right.
And this sort of thing, unfortunately, does actually happen. I mean, normally it's a thing of movies, but it's actually real.
The White House has just said to Politico, and Politico is in the room.
Oh God!
What did the White House say? I'm sorry.
They're canceling all payments to Politico. They sent them $8 million. They sent them $8 million last year and 200,000 so far this year.
Already? It's been like 2 weeks, team.
Yeah. As far as I can see on the reporting, is they have like 40 memberships. They have like 40 paid memberships, and they're just like voluntarily overpaying for them. This is a bribe without saying it's a bribe.
Has anyone reported on Politico's operating budget?
I have not seen it, but news is kind of coming out as we were going live.
Right. So I didn't have time to look it up before we went live, but I wonder what percentage that 8 million is, because for some that's not a significant amount. For others, that's a huge that's a serious amount of money to lose.
This is going to be an amazing scandal.
And it's Politico's not alone. Like, Politico is the first, but if we follow this rabbit hole down, there will be.
Well, we know BBC was on there. BBC was getting money.
I bet anything that Salon was getting money, and I bet anything the Rolling Stone
Daily Beast. Yeah,
I think the New York Times is getting money.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
It seems like the Biden administration basically gobbled down the missing link media and was using them as a mouthpiece, because the legacy media, nobody cares about them, and they can't gobble up enough influencers other than Sisson and a few others.